Inclusive hiring practices are in the spotlight, as they have become increasingly vital to every organization's success. Inclusive hiring translates to improved employee retention and productivity and a host of other organizational benefits. But more importantly, inclusive hiring practices help us level the playing field for all applicants and fight against recruitment bias and any form of discrimination. As Reverend Jesse Jackson once said, "When everyone is included, everyone wins." This is undoubtedly the case when it comes to inclusive hiring. Nevertheless, we tend to recruit people who are most like us or hire the same types of people. In other words, falling into a comfortable pattern. The good news is that there are many things that your organization can do to establish long-term, inclusive hiring practices that benefit everyone. Before we dive into the 7 inclusive hiring steps to implement immediately, in the first comment below, you can find the link to download our beautiful Diversity and Inclusion Survey Guide, which you can use to assess the level of inclusion and diversity in your organization. Hi, Nelly here again. Before we jump to the 7 steps of an inclusive hiring process, remember to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like this video. Let's start with number 1. Define what diversity and inclusion mean for your organization. Remember that diversity can be based on different types of people and intersectionality within those types. Most often, gender and race are mentioned as defining diversity, but there are also other factors to consider, such as neurodiversity, ability, veteran status, or age. For example, the experiences of a gay Latina will differ from those of a black woman 20 years her senior, even though they are of the same gender and may have held similar roles. Write inclusive job descriptions. Use inclusive language for hiring, which includes leaving out gender-based language and terms, as well as industry jargon. Start with a job title that leaves out any hint at gender or industry preference. Other factors to consider: use short sentences and brief paragraphs. Use a larger font and embolden words you want to highlight. Emphasize job responsibilities rather than requirements. In short, keep it simple and focus on the job at hand. Have a career website that is accessible to all candidates. Make sure language is inclusive and clearly states your workplace efforts to provide diversity and inclusion for attracting the right candidates. Instead of stock photos that trivialize diversity, use authentic images of your team with permission. Accessibility standards that you should implement include transcripts and closed captions for video and audio files, alternative text for images, color contrast standards. When developing a career website, ask your website development team to adhere to web content accessibility guidelines. Make inclusion a part of your employer brand. Find ways to communicate your commitment to inclusion to different groups of applicants. Be honest if your organization is not yet where you want it to be, and share what your plans for diversity, equity, and inclusion are. For example, Chipotle Mexican Grill, a restaurant chain headquartered in California, frequently shares how their employees with diverse backgrounds experience working there. These people represent more than 2/3 of Chipotle's workforce, and over 70% of their general managers have been promoted to the role internally. That is a great way to show prospective employees what your culture is really like. Establish diverse interview panels. This effort can help your hiring team form a well-rounded view of each candidate and gauge different qualities. Having a diverse interview panel can reduce bias and help see candidates from different perspectives. No time for a formal panel? No problem. Gather the best and brightest on your team and conduct a group interview. Intel implemented a requirement for each interview panel to include at least 2 women and all members of underrepresented groups. Within 2 years, they managed to grow the number of hires with diverse backgrounds by 41%. In fact, 75% of the highest scoring organizations in the Diversity Best Practices Inclusion Index require the interview panel to be diverse. Measure your inclusive hiring program. How can you guarantee that having an inclusive hiring process will result in a more diverse workforce? The proof is in the human resource data that you can collect and track. Your applicant tracking system can help determine the characteristics of candidates that have been hired versus those who have not. One great human resource metric you can focus on is employee retention rates per group. For instance, gender, ethnicity, or disability. It's simple to calculate and monitor. If you have increased retention, more employees are choosing to stay on and work hard for your business. Provide employees with vertical and horizontal career opportunities. Finally, to increase the retention rates, make sure that your employees are aware of the internal growth opportunities and that you have an internal recruitment process in place. Track internal mobility data across different groups of employees. It will help you understand what the obstacles to career progression might be and come up with strategies to address that, such as mentorship or sponsorship programs. Internal mobility is extremely important to your retention efforts. Notably, employees at organizations with high internal mobility stay nearly twice as long. These were our 7 tips for creating an inclusive hiring process. The benefits of an inclusive hiring process go well beyond hiring the best person for the job. When you focus on building inclusiveness into the organization as a core value, it will trickle down into all the departments, which in turn will provide more positive results. Now the ball is in your court. How many of these strategies do you already implement to provide more diversity in your workforce? And remember, you can analyze the current state of diversity and inclusion in your workplace by downloading the survey guide we've created. You can find it in the link below. Bye bye!